From Japanese playing cards to global gaming favourites, Nintendo has come a long way over the years, but where did it all begin? You're watching The Game Paradigm, and this is a brief history of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi's presidency. Just as a disclaimer, I'm not Japanese, nor do I speak the language fluently, so apologies in advance for me butchering any of these names. Nintendo was founded way back in 1889 in Kyoto, Japan, and was named Nintendo Koppai. The original purpose of the company was to hand-produce Hanafuda cards that could be used for a range of different Japanese games. Nintendo was founded at a time where trading cards were being banned by the government due to their links to gambling, but founder Hiroshi Yamauchi was the exception, with his cards being widely successful. After his retirement in 1929, the company was passed on to his son-in-law, Sakiryo Kaneda, who later took on the Yamauchi name, who then, after health problems, passed it on to his grandson, Hiroshi Yamauchi, in 1949. Now, this is where it gets important, as Hiroshi Yamauchi was head of Nintendo at the dawn of their gaming endeavours. Hiroshi saw how the Magnavox and the Atari were selling, and wanted a slice of that sweet gaming pie. This later resulted in the creation of the first Nintendo gaming apparatus, the Color TV Game 6. Now, the one thing Nintendo struggled with after this was making it big in the United States of America, and were left scratching their heads wondering where they were going wrong. In comes Shigeru Miyamoto, one of the now pillars of Nintendo, and delivers them their solution, Donkey Kong. Yamauchi wasn't satisfied with competing and had his sights set on something else on the side, setting his best teams of research and development to the task of creating something innovative. From this came the Game & Watch, created by Gunpei Yokoi, which was all in all a small LCD screen with a ball-catching game. Then came in the Famicom. Well, to me and you it was probably just known as the NES, Nintendo Entertainment System. Famicom was its original name, an abbreviation of Family Computer, but when it was released in the United States, the name change was implemented. Along with the console were an array of now classic titles, including Donkey Kong, The Legend of Zelda, and of course, Super Mario Bros. The NES is what arguably saved the video games industry following the video games crash, where industry revenue dropped from $3.2 billion in 1983 to $100 million in 1985. Enter the NES, the console that revitalised the games industry and sold just shy of 30 million consoles by 1991 in the United States alone. Considering the less than promising outlook of the industry, Nintendo took a gamble, and without them the games industry may have ceased to exist altogether. Nintendo decided to take a shot at their handheld gaming again, and this time they seemed to get it just right. In 1989, the first Game Boy launched in Japan and released a year later in the United States. At the helm of the Game Boy development was none other than Gunpei Yokoi, the aforementioned creator of the Game & Watch. When the Game Boy was launched, you could get games like Super Mario Land, Alleyway and Baseball. Another popular game, later added to this list, was the now globally adored Pokemon franchise. As the NES slowly approached the end of its lifespan, Nintendo released the Super Famicom in Japan in 1990, which to their delight sold out in just 3 short days. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System was then released in 1992 in the United States and blessed the world with another assortment of fantastic games, including Chrono Trigger, Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country and Secret of Mana, just to name a few. Now, what Nintendo followed up with in the SNES's final years is something many Nintendo fanboys try to forget, the Virtual Boy. A tabletop gaming console that worked in a similar way to what today's virtual reality headsets work at their core. You essentially look at 2 small screens through a visor-looking contraption whilst you play the game. It's clear from Nintendo's lack of VR attempts in recent years that the Virtual Boy didn't go great, and it was something Nintendo sunk a fair amount of money into. If you think that this is the part where I tell you how Nintendo gave up and took a break from making games, then you're wrong. Very, very wrong. Hiroshi Yamauchi, still at the head of the time despite wanting to retire, launched the N64. Well, why the 64 you ask? Well, that was because it had a 64-bit processor obviously, something that I definitely didn't Google. The last console released with Hiroshi Yamauchi at the head of Nintendo was the GameCube, released in 2001 for Japan and the United States, with it being designed as an exclusively gaming console. This was almost in response to the Xbox and PlayStation 2 having built-in DVD playback. With the console being pushed in a performance-focused direction, Nintendo also sold the console as cheaply as they could, cheaper than the other consoles on the market. This is what almost gave Nintendo the edge in the market, as it was the cheapest console at the time and sold relatively well. This is where the Hiroshi Yamauchi's years as president of Nintendo came to an end in 2002, with him stepping down and handing control over to his successor, Satoru Iwata. Despite this, he stayed on with Nintendo on the board of directors as chairman until 2005, where he deemed the company in good hands with Satoru Iwata and took a well-earned retirement. Now, he had a pretty big pension, upwards of 9 million estimated, so what did he do with this? Well, in very Hiroshi Yamauchi fashion, he refused to take it and actually asked for it to be kept in Nintendo to be put to good use in future years.